There we are. What is up, YOU the Ka-Tet? Just making sure everything is rolling accordingly. As for always, I will give the peeps a few minutes to kind of cruise on through and so on and so forth. Probably get the link sent out myself, but to the few that I see there already, Corey, what is up, man? The recent birthday boy, Marito, what's up, Holmes? My Italian brother from Alter Madre. Who else do we have? Well, the screen is a little far from my iMac, so that is why I bring up this silliness, y'all. But yes, long days and pleasant nights, obviously. We'll get this tuned in and rock-a-lockin'. Hope everybody is having a fantabulous Saturday. I think it's still Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, even on the other side of the world. But Malito, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know you guys are, boy, like 8-10 hours ahead of us here, because it is 4 p.m. Pacific, basically 1900 hours Eastern Standard, if we're going to be super official about that. David Edmonds, long days to you as well, sir. One of my faves from the YOU the Ka-Tet. Jacob is in here. What is up, my dude? Fantastic guitar work the other day, as always, man. One of King, Michael Darnell. That's a name that I don't recognize quite as good. One of King's 2 most underrated books to me. Spoot Dev Likes Cake. That's cool. That is, I don't know. I prefer Pat. That's just me, though. Corey says, sup, Jacob. All right. So Fuego probably won't stick around for long since I haven't read The Long Walk yet. Just popping in to say hi. Well, Jacob, I'm glad that you did, obviously, because this is it's gonna start out with like brief overview and then get into more spoilers, character motivation, all kinds of stuff like that. And if you were just stumbling upon this video before we start things official, everybody, there is a Facebook group that we have called Hail to Stephen King. That is in conjunction with the horror show, which we are very stoked that you are here watching with us. We just crossed 28,000 subscribers this past week, which was really dope and humbling and honoring with, boy, like 5 years that I've been a part of this project since I was very, graciously asked to join and be a partner in proceedings and stuff. But, obviously all of the love goes out to Cecil and Dave and Susie and Marcia and the rest of the team. One thing to keep in mind, after this live stream in a few hours at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, Cecil is actually going to be going live with a pre-scheduled interview with a voice actor from Canada by the name of Dave McCrae, if I'm pronouncing correctly. And he's done a lot of work with some Halloween fan films and I was looking at his IMDb. It is immensely impressive. So Cecil will be, it's going to be a triple episode, I think, today, because I believe we already put something up earlier. But so once again, I'm letting everybody filter in and I'm saying all kinds of heartwarming, familiar names. Scott Baker, what is up? Morgan Tucker, another of my faves and a constant contributor in the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. Another of my, nearest and dearest from across the pond, Mark Pearson. Hope all is well over there. Good sir. Robert Duell, my local homie, actually. Another Arizona, Phoenix area peep representing. Damn autocorrect. Tasha Helms. Hey, good to Jiria. Awesome. So once again, I'm going to give it a few minutes, but curious if everybody who at least tuned in for this and you've read The Long Walk, do you have an old battered copy of the Bachman books like I have that you can see? I've got it taped up and stuff, but there's certain passages I've underlined in it and things like that. And then I have my much nicer, in pristine near mint first edition condition up there that sells for a lot more. But this is the one that I found at Goodwill many years ago, and this is the one that I both read it and I went through the audiobook and made some additional notes and bits here and there. But I guess I will just tweet out the link and then we will get these proceedings properly underway with the actual introsy. But yeah, I ended up I'm gonna finish up with the boys today actually, because we're gonna be doing a review early tomorrow for that, so that will be fun. But okay, live. Hail to Stephen King. And I will also, everybody, be announcing the book of the month for August at the end of the proceedings here. And then we'll save some time for, like, just kind of a live AMA of sorts, provided we do have time. But I do want to give, a significant bumper. I almost ended up going with my parents to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because despite, their lack of enjoying the Tarantino, I had raved to them about the film, and they liked that portion of time in the Hollywood end of the golden age, so to speak. And they grew up in the late 60s and stuff. And so we almost ended up going to see that much earlier in the day today, but not happening. So live hail to Stephen King happening now. And from there, I will just get a sipski of a drinkski, and we will get everything. Rock-a-locka. All right. South Park, represent, always, obviously. Okay. Well, sweet y'all. Let's get these proceedings going properly now. Okay, get back to the live chat. See if there's anybody else that has swooping in. Okay. Corey, it is definitely dangerously hot, and we've unfortunately got some of the humidity factor going around too, because in late July, early August, we actually get monsoon season here in the deadly desert, as I all too often call it. So, but yeah, I guess it is. Tristan Dowson says, Tucson represent. The long walk has always influenced my need for sensible footwear. The crucial importance, as always. So, okay, sweet, everybody. Well, we have 19. Well, we had 19 people watching just a moment ago. Haha. So I think now it is time to get these proceedings underway properly. So, all right. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers, along the path beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of live palaver on to Stephen King. That is right, y'all. I am humbled and honored to have your presence here for a bit of that aforementioned palaver. You can just call me Fuego for short. And I cordially welcome you here to my signature program on the horror show, where we do one, sometimes 2 episodes a day. But the reason this show has been scaled back to 1 a week is for the sheer fact that most days we are back to doing just 1 episode, and we don't want to overstuff the turkey and so on and so forth. So yeah, over 170 episodes of this program now. I want to say this is 172 or 173, but we always, as of at least a good chunk of this new year of 19, been doing a book of the month club in conjunction, as I said before we went, properly into the proceedings here, in conjunction with the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. And the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group has nearly 600 people in it now. It's not like a ginormous, Facebook group Ka-Tet in the tens of thousands or whatever, because there's some really cool ones out there. But I don't know. We have a very closely knit sort of kef and whatnot, and I have been selecting a book for all of us, usually in conjunction with an anniversary of sorts. The one that I am announcing at the end of this program for the month of August that we will be reading and covering live at the beginning of September is no exception to this one as well. So, little bit of context. Richard Bachman was the alter ego of Sai King. That's right. And so he wrote a number of novels under this guise, 5 initially, and then he has since published 2 after that. One being The Regulators in the mid-90s, and then the other being almost like another book in a drawer, which was Blaze. Blaze not really being one that I enjoyed immensely, but still, decent enough. The Regulators is very cool, and I know it's a favorite of Rob Corddry, one of the coolest members of the Hail Ka-Tet and whatnot. But Thinner was the book that, at least, so there's 2 different, as I found out, introductions that King has done where he described just the act of writing under a pseudonym, under a different name. And so in this first release, it's called Why I Was Bachman. And it's a little, I guess, bitter, stoic, whatever, it's just more factual based. And I don't know. when I listened to the audiobook for this, because as per always, I like to read the book earlier in the month, and then over the second half of the month, I'll typically throw on the Audible or, Script or whatever, and I'll give it a listen as well there, so that I have just, I don't know, some additional context. And sometimes, King's a big proponent of audiobooks, and he champions them. He used to have Owen record them for him, back when he was a kid, when there were very few available, and it wasn't like a big thing like you see with Audible now. And with good reason, because having somebody actually read a book to you, it's a really just, I don't know, it's kind of one of those heartwarming, enlightening experiences of sorts. And I have always enjoyed it since I've got more into the whole listening type thing. And I mean, it also helps you get through a book a lot quicker if you're dividing your time between the reading and the listening. So let's say, okay, you get the chance to actually sit down and read at the end of your evening, when an hour or two before you're going to bed or whatever. But before that, you have yard work to do, you've got dishes to wash, I mean, whatever the hell it may be. You're driving around, you've got a 1 hour commute, in rush hour in your vehicle. So you throw on the audiobook, it gives you so much quicker of a time to actually get through a story. You don't have as many lapses in just going through the entirety of it. And it's, I don't know, it's a cool dichotomy, and helps me to get through stuff quicker now. And so, yeah, I was listening to The Long Walk, and the beginning of The Long Walk had a new introduction that, I guess, since I don't have any of these books individually, I was unaware that King had written a new essay called The Importance of Being Bachman. And the importance of being Bachman is one that I guess he wrote around the time of The Regulators. And so when that was happening, he had just decided to re-embrace that, alter ego persona, whatever. And so he had just new light to shed on it, new context, and he doesn't even really mention The Long Walk much specifically in that importance of being Bachman introduction, although he does mention the fact that Bachman was very much somebody with the more dark, cynical ending. He mentions also some information about the dark half and writing that book, and alter egos with Stark and whatnot, and just how he becomes Stark on days when it's rainy and when it's dark. And he also talks about the fact that, he started when he was finishing Thinner. It was the first, Thinner was the first book that he ever had where, as opposed to having the name Stephen King on it and then later being changed up and released as a Bachman book, that from the very start, it said Thinner Richard Bachman. It was where he felt like this persona had really taken on a life of its own. And, he thought about, Claudia, the wife, and he thought about this farm that this character lived in. I mean, there's a fake picture on there, for God's sake. And he just envisioned him sitting with his glass of whiskey always there as he was typing and whatnot. And that he was very much disappointed in the fact that just as he felt like, that version of himself in a darker sort of light, a more cynical sort of light, was really finding its identity properly with Thinner, that was about the time that somebody who went and looked into, those, I'm trying to remember the U.S. records of, copyright in Congress and whatnot, and the exact specification is eluding me. The Library of Congress, I think, is where it's officially registered. But so, yeah, he was disappointed in the fact that right when it was really getting that distinction and finding its footing as far as that, different essence of himself, that, the jig was up and the curtain was pulled back. And so, yeah, he mentions very specifically the fact that the epitome of a Bachman ending is what, spoilers, happens at the end of the Running Man book, but not the movie. At the end of the Running Man book, Ben Richards flies that plane into the building with all the TV executives and extracts this, big, just bravado, destructive revenge, and so on and so forth. I feel like it's a much more satisfying ending, even if I do enjoy the film with Schwarzenegger. I must admit, it feels so much more like a Bachman ending, because Bachman endings, and King even mentions in that new introduction that I was just referencing, the importance of being Bachman. He was like, okay, Bachman endings are usually dark, and that's not to say not all King endings are dark. He mentions himself that Cujo is a dark ending, Pet Sematary is a dark ending, maybe even Christine is a dark ending, and I would contend it definitely is. But nonetheless, Bachman, it was kind of his forte to end things in that way. And so, but The Long Walk, funny that he doesn't really mention that as in depth. He actually says road work in The Importance of Being Bachman is his favorite of the Bachman books. But Hey, a favorite Bachman book of many is none other than the second entry that we have here in the collected Bachman books, The Long Walk. The Long Walk is a dystopian tale in the not-too-distant future where there's 51 states in America, where there's people in important areas of power who stormed German nuclear facilities in Santiago, Chile. There's just these weird sprinklings of references to this weird alternate future / reality that this blood game dwells within. And it's funny because this book has a lot of just similar DNA to The Running Man in the fact that, well, it is a, to the death competition, but these kids aren't trying to, hurt or kill each other. In fact, a lot of the time they help each other in the midst of this walk that starts on May 1st on the Canadian-Maine border and basically marches downward down the eastern seaboard, through. They spend the predominance of time in Maine. They eventually get to New Hampshire, and by the end of the book, they're, just getting into Massachusetts and stuff. But I mean, for the most part, it's really just the strange camaraderie and I guess competition in different facets that forms amongst these 100 teenage boys that, if you maintain your 4 miles an hour, you're just fine. And if you don't get off the road and you don't try to, fraternize with other people, and get off the road. I mean, really, you have to maintain your speed and you can't go off of the path and you'll be just fine, but you cannot drop below that speed. You have to keep the walk going. And simple enough, right? I mean, it's got some similarities to Battle Royale and then later on the Hunger Games and whatnot, but really, it turns into the blood game and the game of death, essentially, and not to reference that horrible crap turd of a film, Game of Death, so bad. But if you drop below that 4 mile an hour speed, you get a warning. If you get 3 warnings in an hour, you are shot to death by firing squad. But the interesting thing is that at the very beginning of the book, the first chapter and a half, it really does not reveal. It keeps it kind of vague. They talk about getting tickets. And as Garrity, who was our main character, main zone, since they spend so much of the beginning of this competition in Maine and a good chunk of the book in its entirety, he is obviously going to be our main character. He's the one that a lot of people are putting their bets on, and it's such a widely just recognized and televised and long-standing event that, yeah, there's Vegas numbers that they mention. There's one character in particular, this big beefy guy who eventually ends up, I want to say Scram or something like that, he gets pneumonia and quickly falls out of favor. They eventually find his backstory. And so all of these boys, there's some that I must admit on this reread, I found much more forgettable in a lot of ways. Like you've got the people who obviously, I mean, Garrity being our main character, you've got McFreeze, who is basically like his best friend, the guy who saves his ass countless times. You've got Berkovich, I want to say, yeah, and he's the main antagonist. And then you've got Stebbins, who is just the wild card, the white rabbit, not the caterpillar, as he describes himself. But then there's other just kind of lower level characters. Even though he makes it till right near the very end, I don't find Baker to be the most compelling character personally. Abraham is a character that doesn't become big time until near the back half of the book. I mean, I don't know. I found, with the exception of the 4 that I just mentioned initially, McVrees, and I guess, it's, Schramm to a degree, Schramm, yeah, I keep missaying it. But really, you've got your 4 main players in, Berkovich and Stebbins and McVrees and Garrity, and everybody else really, in a lot of ways, just becomes much more minor and secondary. And there's actually 2 characters in particular who both die in kind of a similar fashion with trying to grab rifles, and one in fact does, and just getting, they're shot and their guts are spilling out and all this other stuff, and it's really grossly described and whatnot. But once again, back to the very first chapter or 2, because it's broken into 3 different parts. First out, we have starting out, which is the first 2 chapters. Then we have going down the road, which makes up the biggest chunk and the predominance of it. And then you've got your final 2 chapters, which are the rabbit, which is in reference to Stebbins, and a revelation that we get in, it's the last chapter or 2, I think, is when he finally drops the bombshell about what his relation is and who he is. And during one of the last times I talked about The Long Walk just passingly, I dropped that spoiler. And it's funny because I've seen various other people do it. I read a few essays about The Long Walk, and it's mentioned very just passingly, Stebbins and his relation and the importance of who he actually is. And yet, yeah, it's not revealed till the very end of the book. So I do apologize for a previous instance. Who knows if that person is even watching? I know it was one of the female, I think it was, was it Diane? I can't remember, guys. I apologize. But yes, one of the awesome ladies from the Hail to Stephen King Ka-Tet was like, whoa, Fuego, you just spoiled the hell out of a really big plot point that you don't find out till the end of the book. And upon this reread, I had not reread this book in a number of years. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 years back when I started my journey along the path of the beam, 7, almost 8 years ago at this point. It was one of the earlier books that I read, obviously, with this coming out in July of 1979 in paperback form. As much as I like the American cover, I think I might like the UK first edition paperback cover better. I've tried to seek out both. I don't have any individual Bachman books, unfortunately. These first 4 in Rage, The Long Walk, Roadwork, and The Running Man, they are very sought after, and they are a few of the elusive white whales that I do not possess. But so yeah, you don't really find out the true nature of just the death aspect here until, Curly gets his 3 warnings really quickly in the 2nd chapter, and he's just like, guy can't walk forever, can he? So on and so forth. And then all shot up, and I think Stebbins, if I remember correctly, steps in his blood and the blood footprint, and it just really very cathartically sets the tone for what those middle, 14 chapters are going to be, because 2 at the beginning, 2 at the end. It's an 18-chapter book, and then the big bulk being the 14 in the middle. So that's me at least laying the groundwork, or the road work, I should say, if we're in Bachman mode for everybody. But I have rambled along quite the bit here at the beginning, so I'm going to see who else has joined the chat since I was back to it. Dave Edmonds, best intro ever. I do what I can, good sir. The book not only got me into Stephen King, but got me into reading, period. Go, Garrity, go. Yep. Picking them up and putting them down, right, Mark? That's what I'm saying. Number 47, Main Zone. Corey Novak says, only King can make a story about a bunch of people walking. Interesting. Very good point, because really, not a lot happens aside from just occasionally people getting gunned down, although there is a lot of very interesting discussion, especially as far as adolescent perspective about everything from the over horny, just sexual nature of youth, I guess, teenage boys and certain discussions there, but then also just the ponderous nature of death in general, and especially as they get later into the walk. There's one passage in particular in, I believe, the 3rd to last chapter that I've specifically outlined, and that near the end of this I'm going to read, because I was talking with my lady about it, and we were just like, that's like some borderline Poe shizzle right there, man. It genuinely is, and it shows how even in this science fiction stuff that, King had a hankering for and didn't always approach as often as I would have personally liked, because I love I Am the Doorway, and, when King writes sci-fi, I love it. But he just hasn't really done it very often. I love the Tommyknockers too. But yeah, King definitely with a very base premise where not a lot transpires aside from kids walking, talking, and getting shot. That's all that happens, really. He still manages to make it incredibly compelling. He really, really does. Does my messages show on the chat? Melito, they should, man. Okay, Pearson says, this and The Running Man, I think, are well ahead of their time. Yeah, I definitely think so as well, Sir Pearson. And really, the only of the 3 Bachman books I can't say I particularly love is Rage, obviously. But, Roadwork it's a very simple and sad story, and it was interesting for King to say that that's his favorite of the first 4 Bachman books. But, yeah, just to double down on the fact that The Long Walk and The Running Man were both incredibly ahead of their time, and, very cool dystopian sci-fi tales with tinges of horror. They're very entertaining. Dave Edmonds says, definitely Battle Royale, Hunger Games, all draw influences from The Long Walk, exactly, whether they're that well aware of it or not. Corey also says, so Cabin in the Woods ending was influenced by The Running Man, probably, and Rollerball. Yeah, they actually mentioned Rollerball. You see, this was influenced by Rollerball because of the fact that in the marketing material in the UK, if I'm not mistaken, they even mentioned Rollerball on the cover of the book. So, what are you going to do? King wore his influences on his sleeve, man. He was very open about the fact that he drew inspiration from Salem's Lot, from Dracula. And there's various other times where he's just been like, look, this is what influenced me. This was like the creative spark for what I tried to go and create and make my own. Edmonds also says they would never be allowed to do that Running Man ending after 9/11. Well, yeah, with the flying that plane, and my God. Scott Baker says, I hope they do the film adaptation justice, masterpiece of the story. Yeah, we're going to talk about the film probably near to the end of the proceedings. That a Running Man review or a Long Walk review. Yeah, well, I just went into extensive talk about all of it. Okay, Thinner is my favorite. Pearson in the race, he doesn't make that. Yeah, that's true. Yes, Mikey Mnemonic, a.k.a. the artist formerly known as Mikey Trauma Trash. What is up, my dude? Okay, Baker says doesn't make it. Yeah, Baker doesn't make it either. Okay, and true. Baker's death was an emotional point. If I was the type of person to care about novels, I would have drawn a tear to my eye. Agreed, brutal part of the journey. Yeah, there are a couple characters' endings that are, I don't know. Baker being one of the guys that is he's one of the only Musketeers left at the very, very end, along with, McFreeze and, Stebbins obviously still being there too. There's some similar deaths. There's some weird ones, like where Scram sits down with one of the native kids and they start talking in different languages and they're having this weird palaver and they both get all shot up because they stop moving and they get all their warnings and stuff. And then Joe, I want to say, is the other native brother. He ends up getting taken down too. But yeah, so there are a couple characters that I do want to at least shed some light on because I found at least what they were about as minor players interesting. One, where is his name? Harkness, I want to say. Where the hell is his name? I want to say it's Harkness, damn it. He's the one who wanted to write the book about everything that was going down. I want to say his name was Harkness, god damn it. Yes, it was Harkness who wanted to write the book. So he's one who was like, if I survive, I'm actually going to write a book about like just being on the long walk and have a perspective from the inside. I thought that was a cool idea. Also, I mentioned Scram, and the thing that you do have to say about Scram is that he's the only kid, at least, that they shed light on that you find out not only is he a high school dropout, but he's married, he's expecting a child, he was the initial favorite to win the race, and, the Vegas odds makers, I think they were like 9-1 on him, if I remember the numbers correctly, but he ends up catching pneumonia. And his debilitated stage, up until he decides to finally give up and sit down with one of the native twins and, just get all shot up. He also has a baby on the way with his lady, back home and stuff. And so it's like, okay, we really need to, if any of us wins, go and help out his wife and that unborn child. And so there's kind of a compelling angle with him. I already mentioned, we'll eventually get to Stebbins and the importance of him. Abraham is a character that we don't really get much about initially until the very end, where he's the one who comes up to Garrity as the numbers have been thinned significantly. And he's like, look, dude, we're all making this agreement that we're not going to help each other anymore. And that's because they've helped each other from certain death. McFreeze saves Garrity's life a few different times when he's just getting dazed. And that's the thing, like a confused, hysterical, just sort of insanity almost starts to come over these kids. You have to figure when it's been days upon days. If I remember, they reached a fifth 9 a.m. by near the very end of the book. So, and just marching for that long, and all that they're being given is, just canteens of water whenever they need it, and new forms of like nutritional paste, like tuna paste and things of that nature. And that's how they're somehow sustaining, and yet all of the different things that could come into play to mess you up, from leg cramps to, sprained ankle to diarrhea to, whatever the hell it may be, they all are mentioned. And you just see a little bit of everything in that regard. But Abraham is the one who's like, nope, no more helping each other out. And I'm making sure everybody stays honest about that, because we are that close and we don't need to be. And if somebody is going to drop out of the race, we don't need other people going and trying to help them and, keep them along. We need the numbers to thin more. We need to get closer to that. Colley Parker and Olsen, I guess, being more so part of the crew of Musketeers that included, Baker and McFreeze and stuff. And there's one other, Baker being the one who was from Louisiana and tells the interesting anecdote about the uncle who was the Undertaker, and how after he died, he ended up wanting to be cremated as opposed to actually buried, and kind of defeats the purpose of a family of Undertakers as opposed to, I guess, being embalmed and, made up in your best and put into a coffin. If you're going to be cremated, I guess maybe when you're in that sort of industry long enough, you just can't bear the thought of somebody, making you up and doing all of that. So mentioned Scram, obviously. Yeah, really, we've covered all of the bigger players. I know Pearson's in there, but really, aside once again from like the main 4, maybe 5-ish characters, the duo of McVries and Garrity, and then our bad guy in Berkovich, who is he's the obvious antagonist. He's the one who is talking smack. He gets that kid killed early on. Yeah, he's messing with Pete's heads, man, and he's a real little schmuck of an asshole. But yeah, aside from our 2 buddies, and then Stebbins being the wild card and everything, and then from the clear-cut villain in Berkovich, everybody else, for the most part, for me, really just kind of fell by the wayside of interest with this particular reread. It's still sad when the minor friends die, but nothing really got me as much as when McVries sits down, as he promised he would do, if he just realized that there was no chance whatsoever. And it's a funny just role reversal after how he ends up helping Garrity so very much. So, and then, yeah, Berkovich, just his demise, the throat rip out and everything, just because he was at the point where he realized he wasn't going to make it. And so he wanted to be more just orchestrative, I guess, of his own demise. He still ends up getting shot up, just like even though Stebbins, when he gets to the point after making the big reveal that he is in fact the Major, he was this military, just leader who was behind this national proceeding, and it's just wild. You find out he's this illegitimate bastard son of his, and the Major had taken him to the end of the race a few years before, if I remember correctly. And so he's been chosen, and he's in there now to be this rabbit, this white rabbit. And he makes mention of just at the Greyhound races where there was a mechanical rabbit that all of the dogs chase around. Used to be a real rabbit, but they would eventually catch the rabbit. So that's why they switched over to a mechanical one. And that's what Stebbins describes himself as. And he's short and lanky, skinny, almost sickly looking and stuff. And he really, Garrity initially kind of doesn't think he's going to be, he's probably going to be, not only does he not have a chance, but he's going to be one of the first to go. But then after, he's just very, picking him up and putting him down, and just very, very much not fraternizing with anybody. And yet all of his interaction with Garrity is almost like fascinated by him. And the reason he describes him as the caterpillar is because he sees wisdom within him, and how he's almost sage-like. But he gives weird ribbings to Garrity. And just to play in and, I guess, segue into some of the weird sexual stuff that we have in here, the boys are all oversexed and or undersexed, and yet oversexed in mentality, because, they're all teenagers, for God's sake. And so they're all talking about, who's had sex, who hasn't, and, who got with their girl, whatever. Garrity obviously has Jan, his lady. But then when we pull the curtain back with McVries and find out what's up with this scar that he had, that's a big thing. And it's a very interesting mystery that we have throughout a good chunk of the story, that once we finally get to the revelation, it's interesting. And I'll cruise to that in a moment. But yeah, Stebbins, he gives a lot of crap to Garrity about, you're gonna, motherfucker, you're gonna, marry your mother and so on. So you got the whole Oedipus thing going on. He's just teasing him. But the funny thing is, Garrity even thinks at one particular time earlier in the book about how beautiful he thought his mother was and how he wanted to marry her one day. And I'm sure that happens with a lot of young boys, It's like the first woman you're ever close with, and you come from her nether regions, so to speak. And if we're going to think about Mr. Mercedes and some of the weird son and mother stuff there, man, goddamn. So very grody to the max, man. But yeah, and just some of Garrity's weird stuff, to thinking back to being a kid and playing doctor with his friend when they were very young, and them both being caught with boners, and then the talk of the walk of shame with your boner and everything. Sorry if this is getting gross, but it's a matter of the book, and I don't know. King has touched on these sort of topics before, Bowers, and anyway, without spoiling stuff. So yeah, it seems that he's touched upon before, and I guess if we are going to at least make some brief correlations real quick as well, this, as far as youthful camaraderie goes, it does share a lot of DNA with it, with the body, with Dreamcatcher. It's got that same sort of genuineness to it, and presumably the first time that King had really explored this sort of friendship in weird, dire circumstances, especially amongst younger boys, because the fact that he started writing this in 66, 67 when he was a freshman at the University of Maine in Orono. So yeah, this is a story that even though it wasn't published until years and years later in 79, he started it. It was like the first book he ever began writing as far as like long form novel goes, according to Wiki and a few other places. So you can kind of tell, because based on just the very genuineness to the perspective here, and to just the ribbing and the smack talking, and yet still kind of that tough love of just, I don't know, giving each other shit, man. It's a part of being a younger guy, especially, and even as you get a little bit older and stuff. And girls give each other crap in different ways, though. But boys with the rough housing and the whatever, it's different. But there's definitely some weird, there's a weird like horniness to some of these kids, and I don't know. I guess it's just a part of DNA when you're a teenager, and it doesn't really go away. And when you're in your 20s for many either. But yeah, guys, they peak in their sex and their sex drive in their 20s, and women it's in their 30s. So who knows? But I feel like I have been railing things off for quite a while at this point. So I'm going to jump back to the comments and see where we're at. Okay. Scott Baker, once again, I see that comment about the film adaptation being given justice. Okay. Yes, brutal part of the journey, cried over novels. Okay, so that was about where we were at. The Long Walk is my favorite Bachman book, says Dazes. Anthromantic Fiend, I can't stay long, I'm out, bye. Okay, well, thanks for coming by. David Edmonds says, anyone else think The Long Walk is a metaphor for life? No one really knows why we're here, and we all know how it's going to end, but it's the friendships we form along the way that make it bearable. I can totally see that, man. I genuinely can. And obviously, if you guys have any favorite characters, if you have any just favorite beats in the book, most heartbreaking deaths, passages, whatever the hell they may be, I'm going to continue jumping back to the comments and just seeing where we're at and how everything is proceeding and going. So please mention those things. Tasha Helms, vaguely stand by me in a way. Yes, most definitely. Okay, RJ Price. RJ, I'm so glad you're getting to make it on, man. Man, this is the first time I could catch any of this. Of course, I'm at work again, and it looks like I came in towards the end. Yeah, we have been going for almost 40 minutes now, but we've still got time. I still haven't read one of my favorite passages from the book. There's still a few other notes that I want to make mention to here. Okay, let's see what Mikey's got to say. I've still yet to read. Listen to The Long Walk. Sounds good, though. Like a not too distant future version of Changing with Speed movie roles. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, Will A. Dude, I'm in the middle of The Long Walk now. They're almost to Old Town. Very sweet. Quotes from Jim Morrison about the mother loving. Okay, there's some very Sigmund Freudian topics going on in the story. Yeah, Corey, you're totally right. There's some odd sexual discussion amongst the kids. I mean, hell, there's even that point where McRee's half jokes with Garrity, you want me to jerk you off, and you're just like, what? I don't know. There's some strange stuff there. I think of the South Park intro where they're like, isn't everyone all just a little gay? Terrible. But hey, maybe that's true. I don't know. Popping back to see how things are coming along. Wait, this isn't the Dog Liker stream, is it? Dog Liker being the inside joke from a few months ago. That one, Jacob, I hope never goes away, man, because it was still one of the strangest streams I have ever been a part of. So I'm all caught up on the comments now. Yes, definitely some weird things in all of those respective regards. We touched on the fact that Stebbins did, in fact, eventually mention in the second to last chapter, if I'm not mistaken, that he is the Major's illegitimate son, bastard son. And it's just funny because of the fact that that there's such a reverence to the Major initially, and yet as time goes on, they start to realize how much of a tyrant piece of crap that he really is. The ruminations on death. It's actually really funny at the very end of the second part of the book. So I believe that would be the end of chapter 16. They even describe themselves, and there's only a handful of the boys left. They're like, they were the Walking Dead. Did that actually, did that come from somewhere? Interesting, right? So I mentioned the 51 states. I mentioned the whole German nuclear base. I originally had an itinerary of notes I was going to try to bop through. I think I've hit most of them at this particular point, but, I do really want to mention McVree's finally, the revelation about, so the two big reveals, at least for me, were about McVree's scar and then also about who Stebbins really is. Those are the two biggest things, because McVree's scar on his face it's a thing that's brought up many times, and he's not very willing to discuss it. And you find out why, because it's such a tough topic for him because of who actually gave him this scar. So he had been dating this girl back home, Priscilla, and they've been having sex, so they lost it to each other. And yet he feels like, since he is slaving away, working this super hard, like physical labor type job, I'm trying to remember if he's on a farm or in fields or just doing menial labor of whatever sort. The specifics are eluding me, but the nature of the contention is definitely more so in the fact that she's working. If I remember, she's doing some sewing and stuff, and so she's making more money for her than for herself than he is actually making. Just doing this very physically demanding labor, and so they get into this argument one particular day. And the relationship was already going sour. They were only having sex in his car. He didn't really feel like it was as much like lovemaking. It was more like, like they were just, like they needed each other's bodies. It was more so about just physical satisfaction in comparison with having any sort of emotional intimacy. And so they couldn't do it at his house. They couldn't do it at her house. There's family and, roommates and different things like that. And so one of the few times where the two of them were alone at her place, he tried to it's implied that he wasn't really forcing himself upon her, but maybe he kind of was a little bit. It's left interpretable, and it's him telling the story as well. But, for the way she reacts, it really makes you wonder, and he's like kind of a snarky guy with a little bit of a mean streak, whereas Garrity is not super fond of Berkovich. He ends up kind of appealing to him at one particular point because he's like, I know you don't really have any friends, and he kind of feels bad for him. Whereas McVree's just hates the hell out of Berkovich. He's really got a feistiness in some ways that's similar to like Beeve in Dreamcatcher, or he's got a little bit of BP Britchie in him. I would say that's who McVree's in a lot of ways reminded me of, and just a little more hard-nosed and stuff. But yeah, so he tries to kind of like get down, and his lady's not in the mood. Priscilla's not feeling it, and she cuts his face. She cuts his face and like permanently disfigures him. It's nuts. And so it's such a sore, terrible topic with him, because he will eternally have that reminder anytime he looks in the mirror of what went down. So that reveal, and Stebbins being the son of the Major, those are two of the biggest things that really had to be made mention of. Okay, what's a few other things? I really did hit a lot of the main beats. I mean, the whole 99 bottles of beer on the wall thing, as they're counting down as everybody is going. There's one particular point where a character says, as morning is coming and they're still walking, he's like, thank God I can die in daylight. And I think it's Garrity who says it, but please, correct me if I'm wrong. That being Main Zone, that's right, Raymond Garrity, our leader of the proceedings. And I'm curious if anybody, there's a tale at the very end that Ray tells, and it's I think Stebbins, if I remember correctly, is like tell us a story, help us, help take our minds off of the fact that we're the last like handful. We're in single digits now. It's like, I think it's him, it's Baker, it's McVree's, and maybe there's one or two other people at that particular point. But I want to say it's maybe those core four. I want to say it's McVree's, Baker, Garrity, obviously, so those three remainders of the Musketeers, and then Stebbins. And so Garrity starts telling this tale about this white knight and how he is very gallantly trying to win the heart of this princess, but the father of the princess won't have it, and he just abruptly cuts the story short. And Stebbins is like, finish the story, when it's just down to the last two of them, because it comes down to just Stebbins and to Garrity, which kind of in a lot of ways with some of the foreshadowing that transpires, it makes sense, as them being the last two left, And yeah, I'm curious, anybody in the comments, just theories about that? I was really, the more I tried to rack my brain about it, I was trying to think of an actual connection, with the story, and was he relating it to himself and Jan, and how he loves her, but he's not sure how real the love is, and she's out there waiting for him, and he kind of shuns his mom when he finally sees her when they get to that part of Maine after going through so much of his home state and all the cheering, all the love. He feels bad at that one particular point where his fandom and fame, he busts a mac on that girl and grabs her tush and everything, and then he feels bad about it. So I don't know, maybe is he thinking of himself as the White Knight, and he's like, am I actually as gallant? Am I that noble? Do I have a real place here? What is the legitimacy of her affection for me? I'm not sure. It's one that I honestly, who knows, it may mean absolutely nothing at all, but I don't necessarily think King would put it at the very end of the book, at the finale, at the climax, if there wasn't any crucial context there. But so yeah, if you guys have anything to chime in with there, that would be supremely appreciated. And now I think I'm probably, after I take another peek at the comments, I'm going to go, another thing I forgot to mention, and it's not in the audiobook, which was kind of a disappointment, is the fact that, for whatever reason, the guy reading, which was, what the hell was his name again? Kirby Hayborn. So Kirby Hayborn, he's the one who reads the audiobook. They didn't have him read the headings. So each of the 18 chapters has a heading before it. And it's primarily quotes. Who knows if they're real or not? I didn't research deep enough to find out for sure. But it's a lot of quotes from different game shows. And this is another thing where the fact that this is televised, the fact that there's competitors dying, it's another reason why there's so much of a connection between this and The Running Man. But it's quotes from You Bet Your Life, Let's Make a Deal, Jeopardy, The Gong Show, with Marx, Truth or Consequences, Bob Barker, 21, Sale of the Century, The New Price is Right. And that was the only thing where I wondered if that was a clue that this is in fact an alternate reality, because I'm pretty sure Bob Barker was behind The Price is Right for the entirety as the host up until Drew Carey took over. I watched a lot of Price is Right with my eye growing up, okay? And it's described as The New Price is Right, and it's this name that I've never seen before, and I even Googled the name and couldn't really find much information, so I thought that was another one of those, just like the 51 states, just like the, storming the German nuclear compound in Santiago. I thought that those were more just clues about the fact that this is an alternate reality. It's a different level of the tower, so to speak. But then you've also got weird quotes from Vince Lombardi about, winning and losing, but always win. And you've got the Count, and, I'm assuming the Count, because I love to count, it's about counting those steps. And just, there's so often where you're just like, how in the hell is it a mind over matter? How can the mind just turn off and just let the physicality continue and keep marching for the equivalent of 4 days? It's craziness. And just, turn your brain off and just let the body continue going, because there's some competitors on, the predominance of competitors on here, of those 100 boys, that could not do it. That's why we're down in 4+ days to just Garrity at the very end when he becomes our winner. But there's also a play-by-play from a boxing match. There's a weird mother bit, a quote from Jim Jones and his apostasy or hypocrisy or whatever. And then you've also got that amusing quote from World War I. You bunch of assholes want to live forever. I always think of Starship Troopers, where you want to live forever. Love Starship Troopers. But so yeah, those headings, unfortunately, they don't make their way into the audiobook. So that was kind of a bummer, after having read it earlier this month and then going back and just being like, oh, I'm not hearing those cool quotes. Or at the very beginning, you've got a JFK quote, and you've got the Bob Dylan quote, and you've got another quote, because I honestly want to read this one. It's at the very beginning, and the book is described from the very get-go as only death can keep you from the finish line in the ultimate competition of the all too near future. And then you've got the dedications. This is for Jim Bishop and Burt Hatlin and Ted Holmes. But it starts out with a quote from Thomas Carlyle. To me, the universe was all void of life or purpose, of volition, even of hostility. It was one huge, dead, immeasurable steam engine rolling on, in its dead indifference, to grind me limb from limb. O vast, gloomy, solitary Golgotha and mill of death! Why was the living banished thither, companionless, conscious? Why, if there is no devil, nay, unless the devil is your God? So I dig the hell out of that quote, man. It really just sets the tone for the actual life and death aspect of the things here, and just the looming nature of passing on that is just hanging over the heads of every competitor in this, and just the weird, just disillusioned impersonability almost of all of it. And then, of course, you've got the JFK quote from '62. I would encourage every American to walk as often as possible. It's more than healthy, it's fun. And then Bob Dylan, the pump don't work because the bands took the handle. But yeah, so we don't get those quotes in the audiobook, which is kind of a bummer, from all the game shows and all the weirdness. But so my passage, which is at the very tail end of part 2, and at the very end, near the end of chapter 16. And this is the part that, as I mentioned, for me is very much of a Poe variety, at least. And this is where obviously when so many die already, and when you're staring down your own mortality, how can you not ponder the possibility, And you've got some internal thoughts from Garrity here that I found incredibly startling, and I was like, wait, this language doesn't even fit as much within like the vibe of the book. And I want to take a sip before I read this because I want to give it proper justice. And after almost 50 minutes of talking nonstop, refreshing. But this is really, really maybe my favorite passage from the entire book, and it goes as such. Hear me out. Garrity wondered how it would be to lie in the biggest, dustiest library silence of all, dreaming endless, thoughtless dreams behind gummed-down eyelids, dressed forever in your Sunday suit. No worries about money, success, fear, joy, pain, sorrow, sex, or love. Absolute zero. No father, mother, girlfriend, lover. The dead are orphans. No company but the silence like a moth's wing. An end to the agony of movement, to the long nightmare of going down the road. The body in peace, stillness, and order. The perfect darkness of death. That's some heavy shit, man. Really, really is. And it's one that I'm glad I came back across in this read, because I feel like it really, in the end, yes, it is very much a book about camaraderie, but it is also about pondering your own mortality and how it can truly happen when faced with the most dire of circumstances at any age. And it's really fascinating to see it come from an adolescent perspective, but in a lot of ways, there is so much maturing that goes down with these characters over the course of the walk. It's just, that's growing up, man. Not to quote Blink-182, I guess it's growing up. It really, truly is. These boys become men over the course of this crazed competition and all of its bloodthirsty brutality. And it's a hell of a book. I have found, I really want to reread Roadwork and The Running Man now, because I feel like there's a part of me that I don't know. They're all three so good, and yet vastly different in regards. But obviously, you can see the difference between Roadwork in comparison with the similarities of The Running Man and The Long Walk. But The Long Walk is exceptional. And here, after I take another look at the comments, we'll just give a little bit of information about the upcoming film. But we're at almost an hour, and I'm going to have to wrap things up soon, everybody. But let me just scroll back up, see where we're at. Okay. Okay, I think the ending of this book kind of wraps that up, but I'm not going to get ahead of Fuego. Okay. Okay, David, are you the guy that said Joe Bob Briggs should do a Freddy Krueger marathon? Well, yeah, that would be amazing. Are you in a band? Okay, we're having different sorts of palaver there. He looks like he likes horror a little too much. Is that me? I just might. It's, yeah, I play in a band, and the band is called Chiron, and I love horror, science fiction, fantasy. If you're just stumbling upon this, Michael, we're located in Arizona, and yes, if you go to ReverbNation.com/ChironBandAZ. Just Google Chiron Band AZ, CHIRON Band AZ. Okay. Hey, Mikey, thanks, Mikey and Robert, for giving a shout out. Trivia: does anyone know the original Price is Right host? I do. It's the guy who co-created the show, I want to say. Commenting. Can he see these comments? He looks far away. That's why I've got this, to see the comments here. Okay. Would you like to know? Would you like to know more? So good. Join the mobile infantry and earn your rights to be a citizen. I'm doing my part. Also a comment on that Starship Troopers. Yeah, I love Starship Troopers, man. I mean, just the political, social allegory, the sex, the violence. It's so a Verhoeven movie, man. I mean, that Total Recall and RoboCop are like the epitome of Verhoeven, very tongue-in-cheek, ultra-violent sci-fi. I love Paul Verhoeven. He's amazing. Okay. Scott Baker says, can't remember which character it is, but the boy who just spaces out and is in a kind of trance for a while, and the walk is really scary. I believe that's Olsen, if I'm not mistaken, who just goes into like the full-on trance, and yet they observe the fact that, wow, that's the epitome of mind over matter, and the fact that your body still goes. It's like the fact that it's where just your muscle kind of muscle memory retention of sorts just kind of takes over. Like, there's times when I'm on stage playing with Chiron where I was just like, man, I haven't played this song in forever. I haven't even cognizantly thought about it, and just I do it. You know, it's just sitting in my subconscious muscle memory of sorts. Okay. Anyone has an idea what squatting is? Garrity's dad got squatted. Oh yes, that's actually, David, that's a good thing that I forgot to mention, is the fact that we do find out that Garrity's father used to work for the government, and that he's very critical of not just the long walk, but a lot of government stuff, and that his government was taken into custody by two officials on their doorstep one particular day, disappeared, and just never to be seen again. It's like 6 or 7 or 8 years or something like that. His dad just straight up disappeared after he was critical of the government. So it shows just how overbearing and powerful and evil that they presumably are within this. All right. Peace out, guys. Gotta go, says Mark Pearson. Thank you so very much, my dude, for stopping through. Greatly appreciate it. I know it's late out there in the UK. How does he talk so much? Is he breathing? Is he really an android? I'm passionate about this stuff, man. You know, caffeine helps, and just an interest and a love of it is, it's a gift of gab, somebody told me one particular point. I don't know, but okay. Tasha Helms says that brought thoughts of 84 to me. Yeah, as much as I love 84, I personally prefer Huxley's Brave New World, but they're both really, really good. I mean, for Orwell, I definitely prefer Animal Farm, and then Huxley, I mean, shit, Huxley, The Doors of Perception, and then Brave New World, he's terrific as far as sci-fi goes. Okay, Squad is a government, militia, military. That's the Bachman books, right? Yep, Will A. This is, so even though The Long Walk has been released individually, it is collected in the Bachman books. Yep, my old raggedy copy here. If we get the glare proper. So yes, I've held on to this for quite some time, and we're almost all caught up on the comments. Yeah, V for Vendetta, Corey, definitely has some similarities to that as well. How did y'all take the ending when Garrity runs away from the lieutenant and the prize? Why do y'all think he ran away? Corey, I think he ran away is because he was in such a confused daze. He thought that the figure in front of him was another competitor that he still had to get past, and I think that's why he started running. So he's like legit delirious. He couldn't even cognizantly remember all of the people who might still be alive or were still dead. So he's like practically catatonic, and especially for the sheer fact that it mentions that both physical and mental problems that came with the winners of the previous walks, most of them did not live very long afterwards, even if you do get the prize, which is anything you want for the rest of your life, as much as you want for the rest of your life, and all of this different stuff. It just shows the toll of the prize and the price paid and all of that stuff. So yeah, he thinks the vehicle that's coming on, which actually has the Major in it, is a foreign vehicle, because that's the thing. There's interference, tickets that can be given out, and if you try to interfere, now granted, he didn't kill the guy throwing the watermelon out there, but he didn't like super interfere. He just got kind of a warning, so to speak. But yeah, if you interfere, if you're an outside bystander that tries to influence the process too much, they'll kill you too, And so that's something to keep in mind, and that's why when he sees this vehicle, he thinks it's a foreign vehicle and that somebody's about to, get their ticket for driving on the course. And so, yeah, he's delirious at that particular point, and that's the most that I got out of the fact that, okay, yeah, he's won, but he's messed up, and who knows how long he actually has. And so, yeah, it's one of those darker, more ambiguous endings. It's very much a Bachman ending. That's for sure. It really, really is. And so it's not an ending where it's not like Ben Richards sticking it to those TV execs, as I mentioned earlier, and flying the plane into the skyscraper that is the TV office's headquarters and whatnot. It's not like there is no revenge really taken upon these corrupt, evil people of power like you have. Like Running Man is the more satisfying ending, I would think, despite being a really dark ending. Whereas this is, as I said, more of the ambiguous, interpretable sort of thing. So, yes, okay. The only good bug is a dead bug, and Mikey's still quoting them. I love it, I love it, I love it. They should make a sequel to Christine 1983, says Steelers Respect 90. Well, they left the book wide enough open. Yes, they did. He bought a little. Yes, he did. This is the best part of the trip. This is the trip, my favorite part. Okay, I think he goes crazy and can't accept the races ever. Yeah, absolutely. That the survivors are never in good shape after the walk. Yep, exactly. Chris Bethel, oh no, and we're just about to end because we're almost at an hour already, and Cecil already has a live stream planned for a few hours from now, so there isn't, unfortunately, going to be very much time, regrettably, and Sarah Counts is just getting here. Yeah, we had to do this one earlier specifically. Scott Baker has a question. Long days and pleasant nights to you as well, Sarah. Thank you so very much for joining, even if it is here at the tail end. So Scott's question is, here's a question. Would any of you participate in the long walk? Fuck no. No way, man. Not interested. I think I love living too much, and beyond that, I don't think the risk and the reward are enough for me, and I feel like you do have to have a sort of just bloodthirsty indifference of sorts to just your own persona, even if there are there's a lot of kids in this, a lot of these boys who are like, that they start to realize very quickly that, okay, it's not like just taking a dare. It is in all actuality as horrible consequence-wise as it's advertised. I mean, there's no other way around it beyond that. And so, no, to Scott's, I never would. I just don't think that. I'm a lover, not a fighter man, and I still have so much left to do in this life that I wouldn't want to shorten my chances by failing at something like this. And that's not to say that I'm not competitive. I played soccer and basketball all growing up. I still find competition in the creation of art and in trying to be the best sort of Stephen King reviewer / person spreading the word about him. And, just trying to always up my game as a journalist and as a creative in general. You can never be satisfied. You can't rest on your laurels. Knowledge and creation has to be like opening a door to a room with like 2 or 3 more doors, and you just have to keep the course and keep on. So, yeah, I could never do this, and but I guess mad respect if somebody ever could. So Cecil Laird is chiming in and says, I have a question. When you getting a mic? Yeah, the onboard mic has been a point of contention that needs to be adequately remedied, which I would hope by next month, September 7th, I believe it is, which is going to be, so the first Saturday of the following month is when, just to remind everybody, we do the live Book of the Month Club. So I guess this is no better time than any to announce that the Book of the Month for its 40th anniversary, because it was released in August of 1979, is going to be none other than The Dead Zone. That is right. I've seen a few people in the Hail to Stephen King Ka-Tet mentioning that, yes, they're like, okay, I've been reading The Dead Zone for the first time. I've been rereading it, so on, all kinds of cool things of that nature. And it's a damn good book, and it's an especially poignant one subject-wise, because the fact that we are approaching primaries and, the election season is looming, and, there is somebody in power who I am not here to denounce or to build up, but I know that the current United States president is a point of contention amongst many people in the pro and in the con variety. I'm a registered independent, so I'm not here to say anything like that. But the Dead Zone is a book that I personally feel is more relevant than ever before, especially with kind of the second story that we get once Johnny is no longer investigating, murders and stuff like that in Castle Rock. The first Castle Rock novel, that is going to be our book of the month for August. So get to reading, everybody. And then on September 7th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, we will be doing the live stream discussion all about it. So yeah, you've got over a month to read through this one. It's terrific. And then another thing that we have to mention is the fact that The Long Walk is being adapted into a film. Andre Ovredal is a director who is behind the upcoming Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark that you can anticipate an upcoming review of from us here at the Horror Show. There is an early screening, I believe Wednesday, that we will be attending. And so that is, and it's, I love those Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark illustrations specifically, even if the stories themselves were very short and to the point and whatnot, very much for young readers. The images were very much not for young readers. So keep that in mind, everybody. But yes, he also did a fantastic film called The Autopsy of Jane Doe. So he is the European director that is next adapting The Long Walk, and I'm extremely, extremely excited. Although I am a little bit weary of the fact that Frank Darabont had the rights to this for a long time, and he kept just retaining the rights, re-upping on them, and then he finally let them lapse, and immediately when he let them lapse, James Vanderbilt, who has written some very good stuff. I enjoyed Darkness Falls. I don't think the first Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield is really that bad. I was rather entertained by it. And then he did the script for Zodiac, which is one of the most underrated Fincher films. Terrific cast between Robert Downey and Gyllenhaal. It's fantastic. So he also did a movie called Truth recently that a lot of people, it's a Robert Redford film, a lot of people spoke the praises of. But unfortunately, James Vanderbilt, who is scripting The Long Walk, has also written scripts for White House Down, Independence Day Resurgence, and The Meg. So chew on that for a little bit, everybody. And I mean, I'm hoping that based on the quality of the source material, I'm really curious if it's going to be a PG-13 film or an R-rated film. If I was to put my money on it, I think it's going to be PG-13. I think you can get away with this being a PG-13 film. It does not need to be R-rated. I mean, it was one of the 100 books voted a decade or two ago, one of the 100 best written pieces of literature in the 20th century for young adult readers. So take that into consideration accordingly. But yeah, there is no release date or shoot dates or anything like that. But yeah, after the rights lapsed in 2018, James Vanderbilt picked them up. He is the producer, he is the writer, and then Andre Ovredal earlier this year was chosen as the director. So we're going to see a Long Walk movie. Keep that in mind, everyone. And that is going to bring us to the end of things here. So I'm just going to give it a little bit more time if anybody has a question or something to throw out. But yes, we do have a live stream, another one coming in just a few hours, which is going to be very cool. So at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard, 11 p.m. Eastern, Dave McCrae, if I'm pronouncing his name properly, that is something that Cecil has had brewing for quite some time now. He's going to be conducting that. Terrific voiceover actor. Cecil clued me into a few of the awesome questions that he has for this particular guy, and you are going to be more than entertained and impressed. His resume is incredibly impressive. Lots of Halloween fan film stuff specifically is like the primary thing that I think just kind of got his name out into the horror world. So make sure to tune into that in just a few hours. But I'm going to take just one more peek at the comments before wrapping everything up here. And because I have a little bit of The Boys to watch before that is all said and done and we get that review thing going. So, okay. Bump-a-de-bump, bump-de-bump-de-bump-de-bump. Okay, there's also a soap commercial with a guy that looks like if Fuego and Cecil fused. Wow, says Sarah Counts. That's nuts. Okay, it's really uncanny, and that's crazy. Y'all give this guy $1. He does a lot for us. Well, once again, okay, very cool. Thanks so very much, peeps. Much, much appreciated. Corey Novak, That is super sweet. Jesus, I forgot it was September next month. Yeah, September is me and Cecil's birthday month, and there's a lot of things going down, a lot of things, including a new Stephen King book, everybody. So keep that in mind. So yes, Dead Zone. That is going to be our August book of the month, 1 week after my birthday, Nino. Wait, what's next month book again? The Dead Zone, says everyone. Nice. That is in paperback. I'll reread it. I'll be at the other live stream too, says Sarah Counts. Yes, please, everybody, once again, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. The Dead Zone is the first Stephen King book I ever read. In my top 5, says Malito. Hell yeah, man. Yeah, Mikey Mnemonic says Zodiac. Zodiac is quality, dude. I have that extended cut of it. That is a terrific, underrated Fincher film in my estimation. I try not to miss live streams. The hosts here are so nice, and I adore you guys there. We thank you so very much. And that's the thing. Like, I always try to do the book of the month much earlier because, for a while I was trying to do the Hail to Stephen King, pre-filmed episodes, get them up at 7 Pacific time, and yet that's really, as Cecil very properly, as the showrunner, he was like, dude, that's not very fair to the people on the other side of the pond, the international audiences and the Eastern time zone audiences, to be getting something right at the very end of the day. Make sure that future episodes get up much earlier, as they should, and that is going to be the course of action going onward. Okay, I'll take that back, PG-13. Malito, how are you not asleep, says Jacob. Thank you, Fuego. David, that's awesome chat. David, thank you so very much for tuning in. It is supremely appreciated to have had your presence here. Jubai Yagyu says, sweet, should be a good stream. Absolutely. And Celtic Flower for the €5. Awesome. Right, I'm going to bed. Night Fuego. Adios, Jacob. Always a pleasure, good sir. Johnny Utah says, favorite Stephen King cameo or role in a film. Jordy Vero, baby. I still love his cameo so very much in Pet Sematary, although the cameo at the beginning of Maximum Overdrive is great. So, same birthday month all around. Okay, Scott Baker. Thanks, Fuego. Great discussion as always. Scott, that means a hell of a lot to me, man. Thank you so very much. I wish your namesake could have survived, but he made it oh so very close. Oh so very close. Sarah says, I'll be awake late anyways because I love nights. How do you do a donation? I know if you have your PayPal linked up to the proceedings, yes, there is a way to do that. Dave Edmonds, okay, Dave Edmonds figured it out. Awesome. Okay, later's my dude. Okay, $sign on the right. Cool. Well, I guess that is going to be about time, all of us. So I extend a grande gracias. I have been Jaime and Fuego, and you can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, where I have my own personal channel where I do non-spectacular coverage called In Fuegotainment. If you just search that, you can find recent reviews that I did of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Lion King, if you want more mainstream fare, Wild Rose, which is a terrific music film about a girl from Glasgow who wants to be a country singer in Nashville. That's a terrific film as well. And most recently, a dark as fuck indie movie called The Art of Self-Defense, starring Jesse Eisenberg, Imogen Poots. It's really, really awesome. So those reviews are all there. But obviously, you are here for the spectacular stuff. So like, share, subscribe if you haven't, so that you can not miss any time we put up a new trailer reaction, film, book, comic. I mean, we're so relentless with all of that coverage, and that is all thanks to the showrunner and the immense amount of work that Cecil, puts into this, and along with myself and Susie and Marsha and the rest of the team. So it is greatly appreciated having you all here. So please spread the word amongst all your preferred social media sectors. It is greatly appreciated there. And yeah, I guess that's going to be the end of the proceedings for today now. So donka, arigato, merci, and gracias, and thanks so very much to everybody who tuned in for this. So until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I say hasta luego, sin amigos, and constant readers and viewers alike. I say thank you, and I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. Get started on the Dead Zone, because that is our August book of the month. Pleasure, everybody, and thank you so very much to David Edmonds, Scott Baker, Celtic Flower, and to Corey Novak for being kind and generous, and I guess throwing something in the proverbial tip jar here for this live segment of Hail to Stephen King. Much love, everybody, and make sure once again 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern to tune in for Cecil's interview with Dave Craig. All right. Get this party started. I've got episodes of The Boys to watch. Later.